Welcome, fellow and future metalheads, to the Metal Substance, a series about metal music and its history, created for the long-term goal of eventually funding the creation of a seasonal city metal philharmonic. I'm your host. Call me Victor. I hope you're relaxing with something to drink, because we got a monster of an album to go through today. We're going to be talking about 1985's Two Mega Therion by Celtic Frost, or Celtic Frost, depending on who you ask. I'll probably just use both pronunciations in this video, so that way everybody will be happy. This is a unique band. There's a whole lot to talk about here. I know I'm going to finish talking about the album today, and there's going to be people in the comments saying, why didn't you bring up this? Why didn't you bring up that? And please continue the conversation down below. But in short, this is the album where metal started to become avant-garde, experimental, self-consciously so. There were no rules to this shit. So what stops us from making any sound, making any world that we would want to? And that's what Celtic Frost does here on this album. But before we talk about Celtic Frost, we have to start with Hellhammer. Hellhammer was a band formed in 1982 by guitar player and singer Tom Gabriel Fisher, aka Tom the Warrior, who was eventually joined by Martin Ain on bass. Hellhammer put out a limited body of work that got bashed by the critics mercilessly, including one writer calling Hellhammer's debut studio EP, quote, the most terrible, abhorrent, and atrocious thing that musicians were ever allowed to record. The criticism got to be so bad that they decided to disband the group and reform again under a new name, that being Celtic Frost. According to Fisher himself, this didn't help much, and the association with Hellhammer would be a drag on Celtic Frost for years to come. And what was Celtic Frost? Well, it was a band that quickly established itself with the debut album Morbid Tales as a band that was playing crushing riffs that could also swing down to a slow, crushing doom beat, and then quickly run again to blistering speeds whenever they wanted to. But there was something more abstract at work here than thrash and doom riffs being on the same piece of wax. The music had this ancient and apocalyptic feeling to it. There was a certain type of ceremony that comes with when you're listening to Celtic Frost. This is music less about riffs than about the mood. The roster changed by the time of Two Mega Therion. Ain was replaced by Dominic Steiner on bass. Steiner had been part of a commercial metal band, and I think it speaks to how metal music had evolved about 15 years after Black Sabbath 1 by this point, that metal music could be considered commercially viable at all. Incidentally, Steiner's band literally called Junk Food. There was some heat brought in. On the drums, they enlisted a jazz drummer, Reed St. Mark. The man had never played metal a day in his life. St. Mark had been rolling around the New York City jazz scene, but saw a real opportunity in Celtic Frost, so much so that he actually lied to Tom, saying that he had played thrash metal before, but would need to get some time so he could warm back up again to the double bass. He had never played the double bass before. So the recording for Two Mega Therion would not take place in Celtic Frost's native Switzerland, but in Berlin. Their producer was more interested in reading auto magazines than helping them find their vision once they got there. This was apparently not a problem limited to Celtic Frost. I do wonder about stories like that, though. Like if Rick Rubin had been reading Better Homes and Gardens while working on Rain and Blood, we probably look at it as some sort of high-minded genius. It's giving very big Phil Jackson, the Zen master vibes. So this led to some unique experiences. Even getting there would be an adventure in the 1980s. Germany was still divided between West and East. So to get to Berlin, the band had to travel through Eastern Germany in order to get to Berlin, which was itself a divided city. Members of the local Berlin Philharmonic helped with production as well. St. Reed was using symphonic drums in a long corridor in the studio building to create an atmosphere that they were looking for. So you've got this jazz musician in a metal band using symphonic drums, which understandably bewildered the local Philharmonic's percussionist. The Noise Records studio head came in. He was apparently unpleasant enough that Fisher left the band as soon as he was done laying down his bass tracks. So with Horst Mueller being functionally useless and Fisher gone, it was left to Tom to functionally produce the record on his own. Now that all the pieces were in place, the waters had been tested with earlier music, now it was time to create a masterpiece. Let's begin with the name, To Mega Therion. What does that even mean? Well, it's a biblical Greek phrase that can be translated as the Great Beast. It was also a name associated with Aleister Crowley the occultist, who was himself a subject of another metal song, Ozzy Osbourne's Mr. Crowley. And all of these things are foreshadowing how the album is going to deal with themes of the occult and religion throughout. There's so much this album is going to deal with, actually. According to Tom Fisher, this was intentionally so, quote, Martin came from the New Wave and also had very strong religious interests. I came from the New Wave and classical and jazz at home. We wanted to merge those backgrounds and inspirations into extreme music, end quote. Now we're going to talk about the album cover, which I perhaps don't do as often as I should in these videos. Tom G. Warrior was a fan of a certain surrealist artist, a fellow Swissman, H.R. Geiger, and wrote for permission to use one of his paintings as the album cover. Now it's time for the Daily Digression. Who was H.R. Geiger? Hans Ruedi Geiger was a Swiss artist born in 1940, passing away in 2014. He was known for creating airbrushed images that were usually biomechanical in nature. In other words, the blending of organic physiques with mechanical parts, very cyberpunk. In 1973, the progressive rock band ELP used some of his work to decorate the cover and vinyl sleeve of their album Brain Salad Surgery. In 1978, he did the cover for Attack, the seventh album by French Jules artist Magma. His really big break is when he's on the special effects team for Ridley Scott's film Alien, which will win the Academy Award for Visual Design in 1980. The Xenomorph, which has now become one of the most iconic images in both sci-fi and horror, was based on Geiger's Necronom 4 print made in 1976. By the way, I'm afraid that there are people who will go, well, technically it's not called a xenomorph. That's just what other people call it. That's great, buddy. That's great, buddy. Hey, don't you have a microscope to be looking into now? The microscope you're able to afford because you saved all that money not buying condoms. So, Geiger agrees on Warrior's request for a painting, and Satan 1 immediately distinguishes this work from other metal albums of the period. It has a different air, a different gravitas now. Let's talk about the literal art itself now. What I like about how Geiger's work is you can appreciate his art instantly, and then you can continue to pick out more details as you observe it. So, for example, this is actually a cropped version of the original painting, but so you can't see the bottom part of it, so you only get a peek at the mound of skulls and bones that is underneath all this. So, you've got Satan here, who has built a slingshot out of Jesus Christ. So instead of on the cross, his arms are suspended in the slingshot, while Satan loads what appears to be a piece of silver, perhaps a reference to the 30 pieces of silver given to Judas to betray Christ, ready to shoot it at you. But he's got these growing appendages coming off of him that are kind of like these more modern Gothic faces. At least that's what they make me think of, especially this guy with the top hat. But they also sort of look like factories belching smog. You've got these details of things in the air that kind of look like nails forming crosses, but there's also chandeliers. This one it could be either or. You have got this extra face growing in the back, and it's like, is this a strange shaped skull? Is this a cap? Wait, this shading here makes it look like this is a horn. You look at the cloak of Satan, you see, like, on the right shoulder, especially here, this drapery that creates the impression of the Tower of Babel. I think it's a reference to the Tower of Babel, more religious imagery. There's a famous painting, multiple of them actually, by Dutch painter Peter Bruegel the Elder. I think it's a very clear influence. By the way, for a cute surprise, look up what the inner gatefold painting of art was on this album. Wink. Talk about a guy operating at the peak of his powers. So this cover was seen as repulsive enough, and repulsive I think is a really great word for it, because, like, what is this thing? Is this an appendage that's supposed to be like an arm? It's another mouth. It kind of like feels fleshy, but it turns to bone. Is it supposed to be the top of like some dinosaur skull? The teeth is like it's got upper teeth but no lower teeth, unless this is supposed to be its jaw. And then if you think of it that way, it's like it's projecting forward. So incredible shading. But anyway, this cover was seen as repulsive enough that many record stores either refused to carry it or they would cover it with a wrapping simply labeled New Celtic Frost Record.
Well, this is just awful. Why do these Celtic Frost boys need to be so nasty? Nobody wants to look at Satan. All right, I got people coming in looking for David Hasselhoff's Night Rocker album. Now, there's a guy who knows rock and roll.
Okay, let's talk about the music, shall we, into the daily digression. So the music, this album drops you immediately into the monster movie. It is like Beethoven or Shostakovich's Fifth Symphonies. 10 seconds in, you already know it's a banger. The horns are making you listen to the sound of this monstrous creature marching, unstoppable, and in no rush because it is inevitable. It's fantastic stuff. This use of French horn is the first of many unusual instrument choices on the album. Now, this sort of thing wasn't unheard of in metal music. Black Sabbath used some string arrangements, flutes, things like that. However, this is the horns of Wagner blowing from before electricity to let you know the metal was always waiting. The metal was always going to be awakened. It was just a matter of time. And it's more than just horn. There's timpanis and orchestral arrangements that pop up between all the riffage. Even today, it does sound strange and unusual, and undoubtedly was even more so in 1985. So this is what paves the way for bands like Emperor and Dimmu Borgir to really have room to run. Then there's the guitar tone of Tony Warrior in this album, which has been evolved on, but it still retains a certain unique charm to this day. His guitar isn't fuzzy. It's not exploding either, though. It's sort of droning. The rhythm is there, but so is the buzzsaw. The future buzzsaw of Entombed is being, an artillery cannon is being formed. We're almost there. But the thing is, we don't know what there is yet. So sometimes you're listening to The Usurper on this album and you're hearing, and you're like, it's the first period of death metal. But all these audio samples are also getting dropped in. You just can't get too comfortable in this album. There's a woman's voice included on a couple of tracks, that of one, Claudia Maria Mockery, an opera vocalist. She was going to school to train as an opera singer while this album was being made and was financing it by being a record company assistant. Tom asked her to work on this experimental craziness with him, and she did, providing vocals on The Usurper, Circle of Tyrants, and Necromantical Screams. Beyond the North Winds is a track that is thrash. There are long segments of it that could slide right onto a Megadeth record. And the same thing can be said about Jewel Throne. It's thrash music, with like some kind of a raunchier version of it. And it's funny when people talk about the lyrics of this album. The lyrics they talk about the most are Tom Warrior giving his good and all that, which is gonna have its part in shaping metal lyricism and sound. But I wanted to look at some lyrics. We're gonna actually, I don't usually do this. We're gonna look at the entire lyrics for a song, that being Eternal Summer. The lyrics go as follows. And this shows the abstract imagery that we're gonna see used more. You're gonna see a lot of this in tech metal, but I think there's some real bite and grip here on this one. And it's got very vivid imagery. Let me read it, and then we'll go from there. The pyramids tremble, darken the sun. The sky turns red. They reach the wall of no return, and the breeze has stopped. Who wore the crown will never be known. Might is broken, for all will drown in the sand. What will remain? Inverted horizons. Denied truth and blinded eyes. The titans arise, the monuments fall. We cannot halt. Wishful pleads at last came true, some always knew. The clouds burn, or is it fire? The gods wince. Human pride and megalomania, the Titans watched it all. The trace led to nowhere, wrath had to come. As ushers at the gate to ecstasy and excess all turned their backs, they won't give us any rest. The fires won't redeem, illuminated's the night, the eternal summer. When they came high from the sphere on shrieking wings, now they're trapped to the ground to heat and dust, and the eye is glowing above. So it's vivid imagery. I mean, from the first lines of pyramids tremble dark and the sun, the sky turns red. It's creating this landscape for the poetry that follows, but like it's not entirely clear. It's is this a metaphor for class? There's titans who stand above it. Is this a thing about man versus God? Because like, what's conflict, right? It's man versus man. Is this man versus God? Is it compelling this period of humanity self-destruction being observed by titans? But then there's also the line about high from the sphere on shrieking wings, now they're trapped to the ground. Is this about fallen angels? Is this about angels who would come to punish humanity but now are trapped with humanity? I don't know. It's provocative, it gets people going. I think this definitely has more than a little bit of influence on future death metal, especially tech death. Although there's some Black and Doom in there too. Tears of Prophet's Dream has an atmospheric and industrial noise permeating it. All of these things are, I mean from song to song, all of these things are also collectively creating a soundscape and atmosphere. This makes it much more than just an album of, well, sometimes they're playing really fast and sometimes they really slow it down. This is so much more. This album is a multifaceted prism or kaleidoscope in action. The angle you approach the music from determines your perception of it, but Celtic Frost aren't interested in your labeling any more than a tree in a field cares what you think about the direction it grows its branches. Let's mix metaphors more. Celtic Frost becomes like the monolith of Space Odyssey, this dark, strong, imposing thing that radiates out the knowledge that'll evolve apes into something stronger. It's arming them with weapons for the future. Sorry to Celtic Frost for comparing your work to a movie that has been referred to as morally pretentious, intellectually obscure, and inordinately long, which I don't think are things anybody would label this album with. So that's why it's difficult to categorize Celtic Frost's work. It throws itself with abandon between doom and thrash and blackened atmosphere, but the labels of those subgenres haven't constrained them yet, or metal yet, I should say. Anything is still possible. Necromantic Screams at the end of the album brings back everything on the menu. It's doomy, it's thrashy. The drum work. Can somebody talk to death metal drummers about using those cymbals like this? The bass, the tone is terrific. It's got this muddy smack going to it sometimes, combined with the kaiju horn stomp as it marches us to this album's conclusion. By the way, let's get a sense of cultural scale here. The first Godzilla movie, the Eternal Classic, was released in 1954. The entire Showa era of Godzilla films had come and gone up to 1975, when Terror of Mechagodzilla ends things temporarily at 15. The first Heisei era, the Return of Godzilla film, is released in 1984. Maybe Tom was kind of in touch with like some of the broader culture that was going on. So that's it for the music, but there's one last thing I want to mention. He said with how many minutes left in the video. The album dedication, which is going to make my Space Odyssey reference more appropriate. This album was dedicated to the memory of the Mercury and Gemini space programs, and especially Gus Grissom and the Apollo 1. For those not familiar with NASA's era when they actually worked to send people to the moon, allow me to explain. Project Mercury was run by NASA from 1958 to 1963 and was the first United States human spaceflight program, started in response to the launching of the Soviet Sputnik satellite. They developed the fundamentals of safe human flight. Project Gemini, or Project Gemini, depending on who you ask, was the follow-up program, which focused on 2 astronaut crews engaging in human spaceflight and preparing for the Apollo missions, which would eventually take man to the moon. Gus Grissom was the mission commander for Apollo 1. Apollo 1 is most famous for several things going wrong in testing that led to the death and burning in a fire of the Apollo 1's crew during some pre-flight tests. This included astronauts Ed White and Roger B. Chaffee. I bring this up to further highlight the multifaceted nature of this piece of art. This is a group concerned with ancient myth, classical music, space exploration, modern metal music, and more. It's now been over 40 years, and this album has firmly fixed itself in the imagination of metalheads the world over. It showed that metal music could have a certain type of sophistication and elegance. Palm mutes and power chords could coexist with orchestral flourishing. It's gone beyond the boundaries of what it literally was to open a gateway to forms of extreme metal that we can't even imagine yet. It's because Celtic Frost blazed a trail to make it possible. Okay, the 3 songs for the album. Innocence and Wrath, Into the Usurper is essential. It sets the whole tone. Circle of Tyrants has been influential. There's a cover of it by Opeth on their second album, which is often referred to, not their second album, their third album, which is often referred to as the intersection of black and death metal. Plus you get to hear Mikhail do the oak noise. Tears in a Prophet's Dream, which I've tried not to reference or talk about too much. It's for people who watch the video all the way through. Good Lord, sometimes I'm wandering through the abyss itself, and other times I'm in a D&D campaign or a video game with this song. I Will Die on the Hill. That Portal, the band Portal, are geniuses. This was made years before Portal was a thing. So, and also the title, because it's an instrumental, so the only words we have is the title. Tears of a Prophet's Dream. What does it mean? I don't know. You might have to go read Dune and find out. So, thanks for spending time with me today. Please let me know anything you think I can do to make these videos better. Also, please start sharing these around. The first 1,000 subscribers are the hardest. In terms of other things happening on the channel, I'm really focusing on Metal Substance for a little bit. I want to maybe try to get 20 videos out, and then I'll start interspersing other things. So, yeah, if you're watching this, I probably have another couple videos already out. Don't forget that there is no substitute for listening to the album yourself. And remember, history will be written by the victor.